Growing up in rural Oklahoma, I was taught to fear God, love my family, watch the weather, and pray. My family would go to church on Sundays, sometimes twice. We would hands-on pray for those who were sick, pray for God to bless each and every meal, and at night count our blessings. There was so much praying and blessing going on that my brother started saying, "Bless me," after each and every sneeze. When I was a boy, I was a girl, and the scissor-tailed sliced paper dolls in the summer sky. When I was a girl, I was also a boy, but I cut teeth in a culture that could only pronounce me damned to hell. At night, I would pray to be made normal and then cry myself to sleep. When the praying didn't change me, I became angry and started questioning everything. My God, my family, my preachers and teachers. In a lot of ways, my queer identity is what saved me. The queer quest to unravel knowledge is what untangled the corded roots of my family's oppression and the truth to rightfulness of sacred land. In 1830, a group of Native Americans, the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Muskogee, and Seminole, were living as autonomous nations in what would later be called the American Deep South. To ease pressure on the U.S. government by white settlers to make more land available to them, the Andrew Jackson government passed the Indian Removal Act, promising land to natives from the Louisiana Purchase. This forced removal is also known as the Trail of Tears. After the Civil War, the federal government took back half of the land they promised. The half-Indian territory, with now half-open territory for settlers during public land runs, would once again be taken. The territories would be united as one and become known as Oklahoma, the combined Choctaw words Okla, meaning people, and Hama, meaning red. In 1907, at statehood, impoverished tenant farmers organized into the early Socialist Party. At the same time, for many African Americans, Oklahoma represented a chance to get away from slavery and start over. By 1910, half the farmers of the South worked on land for which they did not own, with between 1/4 and 1/2 of their annual production going to rent. During the oil boom in the 1910s, however, the area around Tulsa in the northeastern part of the state, including the black neighborhood of Greenwood, flourished. Greenwood was home to several prominent black businessmen, many of them multi-millionaires. In 1914, the Oklahoma Socialist Party achieved elected positions of several hundred local officials due to the party's willingness to reach out to black and Native American voters. Shortly after this photograph, my 19-year-old great-great-grandmother Laura, pictured bright in men's clothing, would marry my 26-year-old great-great-grandfather William. She would never speak of the photograph's origins, but recall as a girl how before she got married, her mother chased her through the house with a butcher's knife, threatening to kill her. In response to the Draft Act of 1917 to enter young men into World War I, an armed uprising took place during the Moon of the Green Corn, a reaction by some 1,500 radicalized Europeans, tenant farmers, Seminoles, Muskogee Creeks, and African Americans. The farmers protested being forced into war where assuredly their farms would die and the local economy would be devastated. When a core group of white Americans, the infantry of imperialism, started turning socialist and away from white supremacy, the government and other centers of power swiftly and decisively crushed them. In the aftermath of the Green Corn Rebellion and World War I-era propaganda against anyone who spoke against the war or capitalism, Oklahoma saw a rise to the KKK being elected to positions in the government. In 1921, a racially motivated riot decimated the flourishing and prosperous Greenwood area of Tulsa, also known as Black Wall Street. 35 square blocks of homes and businesses were torched by mobs of angry whites. During the 16-hour assault, more than 800 people were admitted to local white hospitals with injuries. The 2 black hospitals were burned down. An estimated 10,000 citizens became homeless. 600 successful businesses were lost, and estimates from 55 to 300 people were dead. And they would rebuild. In 1930, in the onslaught of the Great Depression, my 13-year-old great-grandfather Burl quit school to hop trains with his dad and work the harvest across the country, sending the money they made back to the family in Oklahoma. Simultaneously, in Kansas, Laura taught herself to paint acrylic scenes on the backs of cigar box lids. Her daughter Franzi, my great-granny, was a girl watching government bulldozers destroy crops through farm fencing. They herded cattle into large ravines where they then buried them alive, killing them to drive up prices for the sake of the U.S. economy. Drought in the 1930s was some of the most severe on record, and unanchored topsoil turned to dust, which prevailing winds blew away in huge clouds that blackened the sky. During the Dust Bowl, approximately 3.5 million people were displaced, and the scissor-tailed flycatcher, the prairie bird on a wire, was poached to dangerously low levels. Okie families seeking refuge in California didn't have a warm welcome. A border patrol charged Okie migrants at the state line. If they couldn't pay, they couldn't enter. At the same time, patrolmen not only targeted criminals and the homeless, but also indigent families. They were given train tickets back to their legal homes. In 1939, John Steinbeck released The Grapes of Wrath without ever having set foot in Oklahoma, and would later win the Pulitzer Prize in fiction. After the Great Depression, some migrant refugees moved back to their original states, while many others remained resettled. In 1942, in Oklahoma, my granny and namesake Jerry Ann was born. High off of World War II patriotism, my family loaded Jerry Ann up in the car and became National Defense Okies heading west. Franzi, William, and Laura joined Burl to work factory jobs in Los Angeles County. The family would ebb and flow to California from Oklahoma and back again, as did the recovering scissor-tailed flycatcher. The scissor-tail, an elegant gray and salmon pink bird, pops up almost anywhere in North America, as far north as Nova Scotia and as far south as Panama. But they always come back to Oklahoma, y'all. They wander widely on their way, but they always come back to raise their young. And that's what my family did. In 1954, my family decided that California wasn't the place they wanted to raise their kids, so the Okies returned to where they came from. And if they hadn't, my mom might not be here. And if she hadn't, I might not be here. But you won't find me in any textbook in Oklahoma. You won't see my family flipping through the pages. The history that happened there won't be told there through the lens of a white, queer, transgender man learning truth and self-discovery. In fact, before now, aside from tornadoes, if I were to say Oklahoma City, you'd probably say bombing, and that would be your context of my life. But in 1995, I was a 13-year-old boy experiencing a girlhood, taking diet pills to try to fit in my body when a bomb detonated in downtown Oklahoma City. 168 people were murdered. Among the dead, my 33-year-old closeted queer cousin Valerie. I knew her secret, like we all do, and I loved her. To be an Okie and to be queer, you have got to have guts to withstand it. To inherit a legacy of brutality, to suffer violence from both the giving and receiving hand, to be stripped of home, to be slashed and burned, to be denied rights, denied dignity, to be constantly in motion, to search for home, to be the joke, to be so poor, to beg, to steal, to burn down, to rebuild, to burrow in the ground every spring, to be red dirt, to grow roots, to rip up your own roots, to unearth, to destroy, to defy, to lay everything on the line, to recover pieces of you left from the bombing, from the storm, from the KKK rally. When the heavens rain down softball-sized hell, you are in a helmet and one baseball bat swing away from a home run. You are a scissor-tail, cutting your own mold in the sky. You are resilience, a queer, transgender man, a California Okie, relearning how to pray. Making yourself up as you go along. Who's gonna take you home tonight? Who's gonna take you home? Who's gonna take you home tonight? Who's gonna take you home? Does God bless your transsexual heart? True trans soul rebel. All dressed up and nowhere to go, walking the streets all alone. Another night you wish you could forget, making yourself up as you go along. Who's gonna take you home tonight? Who's gonna take you home? Who's gonna take you home tonight? Who's gonna take you home? Does God bless your transsexual heart?